Hello, welcome. Is my mic on? Hello? Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Welcome, how you guys feeling? How's it been going today? Good, good. How many people in the audience are an engineer? How many people manage engineers? Okay. How many are striving to be an engineer? How many are just here because, you know, you're just trying to hang out and network, and you want to meet some cool people, and you want somebody to write some code for you or something? All right, we'll talk offline. Well, welcome. My name is Leah McGowan Hare. I will be your moderator with this wonderful panel I got to talk to back in the green room and got some great information. So get ready for some great information and have some great questions ready. So what I'd like to do at this point is have everybody introduce themselves. We'll start over here with Alex and circle through. All right? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alex Tabany. I'm the Executive Director of Computer Technologies Program. We're a nonprofit organization in Berkeley, California. We provide career training for people with disabilities.
Thank you.
Cool. Am I good? I don't know if you can hear me.
If you can use mine though.
I can just yell. That's all right too. Okay, cool. My name is Dom. I'm an infrastructure engineer at Twilio, which is a mobile API company. The shorthand is we have an API that allows you to do and manipulate the telephone.
Could you understand what an API is, just super high levels?
Like application programmable interface, or like a...
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Like, okay, sorry.
I'm Leslie Miley. I'm an engineering manager at Twitter. I manage password reset, two-factor authentication, the entire login infrastructure. So if you can't get into Twitter, you can email me.
Or if I want to get in somebody else's Twitter account.
Don't email me.
Oh, okay.
My name's Levon Lloyd. I work at Square out of the New York City office. I'm a software engineer there. I work on a product that we haven't released yet, so I can't tell you guys about.
My name is Luce. I'm an engineering manager at Indiegogo. I don't use Twitter, so I'm glad we're on the panel and can talk now.
Awesome. Well, great. Why don't we go ahead and get started? So, seeing as the title is Life as a Diverse Engineer, the first question I want to kind of throw out there to you all is, what does it mean for you personally to be a diverse engineer? Who wants to go ahead and tackle that first?
Sure, I'll take it. You know, coming to a conference like this is interesting because it reminds me that for many people, diversity is race and gender. But for me, it's about disability. We train people with disabilities, and that's mainly what we're thinking about. For myself personally, I'm half blind, I'm half deaf, and if you ask the staff, I'm half crazy, but... So for me, what it means to be diverse is that I think and I work in a non-traditional way. And that gives me some unique strengths and some unique weaknesses. The unique strengths part means that I can solve problems that other people typically can't solve because I go about things differently. Of course, it makes some situations more difficult for me. So I don't have a good understanding of how other people get things done. So I do them the way that I think that they're best. And for a certain set of problems, I'm really very good at that because of this uniqueness. And just being a disabled person in the world, I face difficulties all the time that I have to problem solve and overcome. So I'm very well trained in overcoming unique problems that most people aren't even aware of. So that's what it means to me.
Thanks, Alex. And I think that's great because I think oftentimes often when you think diverse, you think women and people of color, right? And there is this aspect of that we often overlook, which are those with challenges, disabilities. Who else wants to jump in on the question? All right, okay, let's go on.
For me, it's been a journey as a diverse engineer, and it started off where when I started my career, I really tried to downplay my blackness because you're generally the only black person around. So you don't, and you hear that it's intimidating, and early in my career I got, oh, you're intimidating, you're too intense. So I played it down, and then over time I started realizing that it was actually not serving me really well. And I learned that whether I wanted to or not, I was an ambassador. And I was an ambassador for African Americans. I was an ambassador for strong African Americans. And that I had to take that responsibility on whether I wanted it or not. And it has really helped, you know, over the years of realizing that when I walk into a place that I have to let people know that I'm black. Because Silicon Valley loves to say they're colorblind, and strangely enough, that's been to our detriment. And by letting them know I'm black has actually enhanced my career and enhanced my standing at the company. And it really, I think, leads us to a better place when people have to confront the fact that you do come from a different background, and that you do solve problems differently, and that you do approach things differently. And you find that people do start coming to you more to ask questions. And it just opens up an entire conversation. I think helps continue to diversify tech as a whole.
Now when you say you let them know you're black, I mean, I kind of knew that a little bit. I'm just saying. What is it, Leslie, that you do that lets them know? Or
sometimes it's really not shying away from asserting your culture. Really not shying away from, you know, asserting, you know, your, like, whether it's music, whether it's movies, you know, whether it's your experiences just as an African American. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm at lunch with people and I tell them, yeah, I came to your interview and they sent me to go fix the copier when I'm here for an engineering interview. And let people know that these are my stories. And that's my way of letting them know. It's like, my experience is different than yours.
So would it be safe to say not trying to necessarily assimilate into a culture that doesn't quite represent you, but just being who you are innately? Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
For me, I think it's a challenge, but it's also been an opportunity. You know, growing up, aspiring to be an engineer, to be in science and mathematics, I didn't really have any role models that looked like me. So now I get to serve as a role model for the next generation. Hopefully they can look up to me and see that they can achieve what I've been able to achieve.
Great, thanks. Levi.
I struggle with this question because I think there's some things that are easy to come out about. I'm a proud feminist. I'm a proud lesbian at work. I'm seen in these ways, and I mean, that's my own journey to come and learn how to be a mentor and learn how to speak out. But I also consider myself to not be a woman, but I love my estrogen dominant body that I was born with, and see it as this incredible strength that I have. And so there's a lot of, I guess, non-binary gender confusion that I have, and that I'm comfortable in this personal situation to say, hey, I'm loose, and I prefer male pronouns. But I don't know how that fits in non-personal spaces like professional ones, where there's a lot of intimate and prolonged interactions that are still not personal, and there's power dynamics and status quos, and just I have a lot of confusion around that. So I'm feeling very inspired by already what you've said.
So what are some of the strategies that you have in place to make, like, this is, in this space you're comfortable, right? Yeah. How do you bottle that up to carry it with you so that regardless of where you go, you have that, so it allows you to authentically be you? What are the strategies, or what things do you think about? I know you said you struggle with this, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine, because I'll make up one for you, but that's okay.
Please, help me out. And I'll tell you why. The struggle to me is, I don't want, there's some people that I'm happy to tell, but I don't want someone at work to have a secret. And I think especially for things that aren't quite as visible, that's part of my confusion. And also maybe it doesn't matter, I don't know.
Well, you know what I'm hearing across all these, and I think it's really important, I think it's really important for the audience too, is that I think when you really truly tap into your authentic truth, your story, there's so much power in just sharing that. And you often forget how powerful that is, because it really inspires people to authentically be themselves, right? When you aren't trying to be something else or be someone else, it really inspires others to be themselves. So I've learned that was definitely a journey that I too have continued to work on. Almost perfect, but not quite there. All right, so let's move on to another question. So I think we touched a little bit on it, but I'd love to hear if you have other pieces you'd like to add to it. What challenges have you faced as a diverse engineer? And I sort of talked about it with Luz. What are the strategies? Dom, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go with this one. So I didn't get to answer the last question, but I think
I'm sorry.
No, it's not on you. I think I resonate a lot with what everybody else has actually said. A lot of what we in tech do is put a lot of we put a lot into gender diversity and people of color, but we don't take into consideration all the other parts of diversity, especially ones that are invisible. Particularly for myself, I don't think that being out and queer is invisible for me, but for other people it can be. And one of the things when you bring this question up is that so life as a diverse engineer is kind of interesting for me. I didn't, very similarly, have anybody that represented my identity for a long time, before I got into the industry and while I was in the industry. And when you were saying coming out as an African-American person, there's a great talk by Kathy Levinson that is out on 2 counts. First you have to come out as a woman, and then you have to come out as a queer woman. And I always found that really interesting because for a lot of people, it is so much easier for them to associate me as one of the guys than to associate me as a woman and a queer woman. And when I say things like that, I will often hear camaraderie around my male coworkers in other companies. And one of the camaraderie things would be like, oh, what do you think of that girl? And I'm like, I don't really want to have this conversation with you. Or like, you know, like if anybody ever comes up to me and starts a conversation with, so scissoring, like that's not appropriate. And
I don't know.
You don't. That made it really awkward on stage. I'm sorry.
I was like, that's not on the sheet.
You know, I mean, so there are things that like I don't particularly want to talk about, both on stage and with my colleagues. I'm so sorry.
You can help me out.
One reason that I brought the general up is I remember once I earned a promotion. I earned it, and another colleague of mine didn't, and that was fine. But his response after a couple of beers going out was, well, yeah, of course they wanted you. I mean, you're a hat trick. And being called a hat trick isn't really fun.
Can you express what is that?
I am a person of color, I'm a woman, and I'm out being queer.
Okay.
So I was 3, and I was a diversity gold mine. So I should get the job over my colleague who was not.
All right, well thank you. I'm scissoring, I figured that out. All right, let's move on. Many companies are talking openly about diversity. What would you all like to call to action, or what is missing from our current conversation? And I know that Levon and I were talking about in the green room, and I was like, you know, I've been in this space since '92. I was a prodigy. So I've been working in technology a long time. And so when they're talking about, you know, oh, you're women, or you code, or you train coders and all this, and, you know, what is it like to be the only one? And I'm like, well, you know, it's been my journey, and we were having that conversation. So anything you want to add to that in terms of what do you think is missing from that current conversation?
Well, I mean, I think it's, I'm extremely happy that in the last few years the conversation actually started. I've been out of school for just about 10 years now, and when I was first graduating, this wasn't even anything, you know, like Leah said, this wasn't anything that was ever discussed. It was just implicit, yeah. So I'm happy that the conversation is happening, and most of technology companies actually have various initiatives to address the problem in various places. I guess the thing that I'd like to see is a more comprehensive approach to solving the problem, because I think it's it's a deep and a wide problem, and it needs to be, it needs to be addressed not only at the sort of kindergarten through 6th grade level, or just at the undergraduate level, or just hiring more, just going to more HBCUs to hire, or but instead we need to develop a strategy that approaches the problem from all of these, a more holistic approach to solving the problem.
And then this one?
So I think the problem that we see from the disability perspective is that the hiring process is really hostile to our population. I mean, I would call it broken. And I'll give you 2 examples that I think are really interesting. These are real life examples. They just happened in our program. So imagine this, you're a hiring manager, and a job seeker comes to an interview, a candidate, hands you their resume, and your first question is, so tell me about yourself. And the candidate says to you, I just gave you my resume, why don't you read it? Okay, how well do you think this goes over in an interview?
Yeah, not so well.
Okay, this is but this, okay. Or a second example, a candidate shows up for the job interview 20 minutes late, and instead of introducing themselves, explains that they're confused by how BART works. Is this a good way to start Is that a good way to start an interview? It isn't really. And both these individuals are probably 2 of the smartest people you will ever meet. If tech companies are interested in hiring remarkable talent to solve complex, unique problems, they have to be much more thoughtful about how they're going about it. If you want to hire people who are diverse and unique, you can't just expect them to be like everybody else. You can't expect them to have the same education, the same vocational development, the same level of job experience, the ability to present themselves in an interview. Just like we have discrimination against race and gender, it's obvious and clear and there are laws about it. When it comes to disability, it's a much more subtle thing because we're judging what's it going to be like to work with this person and are they really going to be able to do the job. So much of the job is about getting along with other people and not just solving tech problems. Right. If Einstein came to your job interview, you'd probably reject him.
Exactly.
I've been thinking about this as well. It really is reaching into, I think, all of America, not just the top of America. I was thinking about Tristan Walker. I mean, he came from a horrible area. You know, his family history there's some tragic history there. And there are Tristan Walkers all over. There are Tristan Walkers in New York, they're in Detroit, on Native American reservations. You know, and we have an obligation, I think, in tech to reach deeper into our society and deeper into the fabric of America to pull people up. And we just don't do that. And you know, instead we decide, oh, we want the top 10% from these schools and we want the top engineers from these other companies. And I think I'd like to see, you know, the Zuckerbergs and the Larry and Sergeys, you know, and you know, the rest of the you know, the tech elite to say, we're going to spend money to pull people up out of poverty. We're going to spend money to pull people up out of you know, the situations they're in, and I think that would go such a long way.
You know, Leslie, you hit on a great point, which was actually moving into my next question was, what is our responsibility? Because we are at the top, right? Let's be real. I mean, we work at these great companies. We are far removed. What is our responsibilities to reaching into those areas, to those reservations, to those inner cities, to help to pull up those great talents that are there? What are our personal responsibilities to our communities and to the world to truly make an impact and a positive change? And do we have a responsibility, or is it okay for us just to go home and take care of our family?
I mean, I think for me, absolutely, it is the utmost responsibility. And it was easy to, you know, when you're building your career to do that, but I think a lot of us built our careers and our early parts, and then we looked up and we're like, there's nobody that looks like us. And it's because we didn't reach back, and you have to pay it forward. And if we're not doing that, who is?
Then what does that look like? Paying it forward, what does it look like? Give me an example. Somebody said, I want to do that. What does that look like?
I mean, it's like mentoring with organizations. I mentor with an organization for entrepreneurs of color who have never had to pitch in front of a VC before, and we teach them how to pitch, over a 5-week course. It's going back to where you went to school or going into the inner city and mentoring and letting the kids see you. Because they, one of the reasons, somebody wanted me to talk to these entrepreneurs of color, they're like, they want to see a black engineer who worked at Twitter. They want to see a black engineer who worked at these companies. They want to see people who look like them because they don't ever do that. And that is so inspirational.
I'm going to hold back what I was going to say, and I'm going to let Dom go, because you're right on it. You're right on it.
I think that the direction in which we're going is wonderful, but there's one thing that we haven't really talked about, and yes, we have a funnel problem, but we have a bigger problem with a leaky pipeline. So great, we're bringing more women and people of color and people from diverse backgrounds into, and you're hiring them, that's fantastic. But if you are scheduling 6 to 7 p.m. meetings and expecting people with families to stay, they're not going to. If you have only binary restrooms and you hire somebody who was open about transitioning and they don't feel comfortable in either restroom, and you kind of tell them, well, you have to pick one, they're not going to stay. If you don't look at how your teams are structured and how the company is treating every person and not just assuming that everybody reacts the same way, then you can start to think about, like, let's bring in more people in. But you can bring as many people in as you want, but if you're losing all of them, that doesn't help your diversity numbers if that's what you're going after.
So you're saying here, recruiting is one thing,
right,
but retention is the other piece.
Retention is a huge piece, and I think I lost my train of thought. But
I want to add on to it with something that these are thoughts I've been having, and I saw a great speaker at the NCWIT, National Center for Women in Technology. They had a conference this summer. Karen Ashcraft gave a great talk on occupational segregation. And it really drove home to me that when we talk about diversity, we're trying to spin nice, that we're trying to integrate, and that there's a real problem with segregation. And I think that's maybe part of all of what we're trying to do as individuals and as organizations is still wrapped up in this large context, these large systems, this incredible history, and occupational segregation is that even though we work in the same spaces often with people who are of other genders than us and of other races, in our roles horizontally, sometimes we segregate into what we consider. Roles get branded as like, this is a female role, this is a male role, this is a role that's going to have a lot of autonomy or a lot of power, and this is a role that's not. And all of these sorts of things are happening in this interesting way. And I guess I was really struck by some of that research, which looks at the patterns of segregation and of the creation and erosion of economic value based on all this branding. And there's patterns of integration, but quite frankly, at least according to Karen, there has not been a successful route to go from token infiltration, which is what I see in tech in a lot of different areas, from token infiltration to some kind of tipping point of what is diversity? What are we striving for? And how do we destabilize these bigger structures that are boxing us in? It would be great I would love to hear more ideas and advice around this as well.
Well, it sounds like, and one of the things that you were also talking about, Dom, in terms of retention, but bringing it back to our responsibility. We clearly recognize the issues, and we're all very good at, all y'all know we're very good at identifying the problem. But how can we be part of that solution? How can we be part of, in our current roles? Because I think oftentimes we strive to look to have an impact worldwide. And my thought would be, what impact are you having with the platform you're already given? And we're given a platform of our community, of our workplace, of our family. Are we fully utilizing that? What can we do in those areas to really strive to help retention or make change or break those patterns?
So one of the biggest things that I started to realize is that it's not just us here. It's not life as a diverse engineer, and it's not new people coming or HR or recruiting. It's product. So when the product team goes to the engineers and says, I need something new, a new feature every 2 weeks, that entire team is not focused on where they're going to recruit or how. That entire team is probably more focused on shipping than they are on doing a good job in an interview or looking at where they can bring more people. If your company is instituting like a VTO day or volunteer day, or they encourage that, or if your company is out there and sponsoring hackathons like Black Girls Code or Level the Playing Field, Code 2040, then you rally. You know, passion is completely contagious. So if I'm up here and I say, hey, I'm going to a hackathon, and I think it'd be really great if you joined. I know it's 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning, but you have no idea how amazing it's going to be. I bet I can bring my team members, and that passion will spread, and everyone will want to give back, because it's no longer about the work that's just in front of you, because everybody is understanding that this is an everybody problem.
It goes back to, I think, being an ambassador. We are ambassadors, and it has to be infectious. We have to go out. We have to push that as well. I send a monthly update to my entire organization about, here are the events I'm involved in, and here's how you can help. Because I want them to be involved as well. I want them to know about it, and them to have skin in the game as well. And even if I get one person, that's still one person more than I had before. And I think you're right. It's like we have to go out to the community. We have to do it internal to our organizations. We have to do it outside. I work at a platform that has energized, the Black Lives Movement. It's an amazing platform for that, and I have started using it, with impunity, because what else am I doing there? Right. You know, if I don't do it, who is? And I want to keep seeing more people like the people in this room.
I think we can do all these things, like moving with our feet and getting other people to move with our feet, and include where we work. And it's not just about events, but if you can convince an ally to choose to work somewhere because of diversity, that will change things, because we're not making change if people aren't moving with their feet, and that's definitely bigger than us. So in addition to events, I'm putting this idea out there: convince an ally to change where they work if it's not diverse enough. Because I did it. That's why I went to work at Indiegogo.
Well, I guess, the thing that I do to sort of fulfill my responsibility is I attempt to act as a mentor to younger software engineers, and also to be in the community as a role model for other children, people of color that might aspire to engineering.
Awesome. And I think it really is important. And I know, Leslie, you had pointed on something that says, stating just our presence is, going and speaking to young children where they see people that look like them that work for a Twitter or Facebook or Salesforce. And I think, at one point in my career, I was like, oh, I got kids, I'm going home, I ain't got time for all that. I got kids, I'm a mentor right there to all these kids. And then you fall at first, before family, all that, I'm like, I'm gonna go change the world. And I was like, oh, I need to just go change these sheets right now. That's what I need to do. And then I had a wake-up call, and she's not in this room, but a wonderful person, Iori, who kind of gave me my kickback in my butt, like, look, girl, you got some work to do. I'm like, no, I got dinner to cook. But she's like, no, and it does take a reminder sometimes, like, you have a responsibility. And it's something as simple as you said, just going and speaking to a young girls group, or being a volunteer to be an interviewer at careergirls.org, where there's just these platforms that expose these young women or men or whoever to people that look like them, and they go, because it's hard to be something that you can't see, right? It's hard to, if you don't see it, what am I striving for? So I think it's really important, and I think sometimes we forget the strength we have in just what we do and just who we are. And I was sharing this with Levon backstage, like, people go, oh, you're breaking stereotypes every day you go teach a class, because I teach developers how to code using our tool set. And I'm thinking, I don't get up every morning going, I'm gonna go break some stereotypes. I just go and I be who I am. And I love what I do, and I do it with passion. And I think it does open up a lot of the eyes, like, wow, she can code, and she's passionate, and she's a female, and she wears heels, you know, just like whatever. So, and all of that. So it helps just being who you are. Once again, that whole theme of being authentically who you are can truly inspire others to be like, oh, I can do it too. So I think don't ever lessen your power. You have so much power in just sharing your story. So I think it's really important that you continue to do that. With that, if you had to share one thing, all right, two things, with the next generation in terms of advice, I'm dragging out time to give you a minute to think about it, because that wasn't one of the questions that was sent to them ahead of time. If you had to come up with two things that you would want to tell them, or your younger self, what would that be? Dawn.
Oh, man.
I didn't want to go because I always start with Alex.
Okay. Well, one thing that I tell people, and I wish that I knew this earlier, was that when I was growing up, my dad always said, you want to climb that corporate ladder. That's what he did. He climbed the corporate ladder. And that was super linear, and I didn't like it. So one thing that I wish someone had told me was that your career, the trajectory of it, and your life is more like rock climbing than it ever will be like a ladder. And the reason I say that is, one, rock climbing is not linear. Two, rock climbing is really, really hard. Three, you need a really great support system. And then sometimes you'll get halfway up and realize that there's no, that's not the right way up. And sometimes you do have to backtrack, and that's completely okay. But the bottom line is there's no one way to the top. But there is a way to the top.
I like that. I mean, you have to have good quality.
I think that was the only one I came up with first.
Alex, I like that one. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna borrow it.
So I think the two things. One is to think more about people's unique strengths and weaknesses, where we want to evaluate people based on this whole picture, the complete picture, and expect them to be a superstar in every area of their being. But that's not really how people are. We all have our unique strengths and weaknesses. Focusing on those strengths and going for things that benefit from those strengths, developing your weaknesses or learning to accommodate them if you can't. I think that's really important to being well. And I think if I could give advice to my younger self, it would get involved in social services earlier in my life. To me, doing something that has a social focus, social mission, is brought incredible value to my life, much more so than working in the corporate world did.
Build a support network. I spent the first half of my career with no support network, and I look back on it because I didn't think I needed it. I was smart, you know, and there weren't people that looked like me, and it was really hard when I started out, near when she started out, though I'm more of a prodigy than she is. And that really would have helped earlier in my career, and I didn't start doing that until the midpoint of my career. It's hard, but I think today's, with the tools, with Twitter, with LinkedIn, you know, you can find people, you can reach out, you know, it's much easier to network, and use that as a way to not make mistakes, and a way to figure out how to get up the rock, you know, how to do the rock climbing, because it's really difficult, and as you continue to grow and advance things, the challenges become bigger, and the self-doubt grows louder, and having somebody to bounce things off that understand you and your background and your experience is just, it's invaluable.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to basically reiterate what Leslie said. So some of the most important relationships that I've had have been with people that don't look like me, and I've been able to be open to being open and engaging in a mentoring relationship with people that don't look like me, because, you know, like, I mean, I didn't have any classmates of color. I didn't have any professors. Certainly didn't have any professors of color. You know, so being open to those relationships, because it's extremely lonely if you sort of, you know, put the blinders on and say, I'm going to do this on my own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Luz?
I think there's a duality of I'm just rephrasing in the mental model I have what they've all said. Have support, have strength, and that's going to come from knowing yourself, from having these connections, from being with people like you who can relate to you. Not thinking that you have to be an educator. It's fine. You can draw that strength, but then my advice is use that strength to integrate and force that. And I guess I see myself as I am my future's younger self, so I hope I can live up to that and take this advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Do we want to move into questions? I have 5 minutes. Q&A now?
No.
All right. I don't know who's a mic runner. There we go. William came out of nowhere. Oh, I am the mic runner. All right.
Hi, my name is Leslie. I work with IEEE, Association for Engineers, and this is my first time attending an event like this. I'm so inspired, and when I go home, I know my boss is going to say, "So what did you learn? What could we do for engineers and people that are passionate about this?" And I just wanted to see what associations or other organizations that are there to support engineers can do to help the cause.
I got a big old list for you if you'd like. I mean, if you want to support engineers going in or support existing engineers, there are very many. I also speak really fast, so I'm happy to go to you afterwards and kind of give you those. But there's Code 2040, LPFI, Black Girls Code. You have Maven, which is a queer boot camp for youth.
Girls Who Code.
Girls Who Code.
Go to Grace Hopper.
Yeah, Grace Hopper, Lesbians Who Tech.
Tons.
Yeah, there's a lot. I can send them out.
Hi, I was kind of curious in getting your thoughts about the power of labels and branding and self-identification, because I had a really interesting moment when you asked in the beginning how many people are engineers, and I did not raise my hand, and yet I code. For my very first company, I taught myself to code, did the production release. I'm currently coding a game right now, and my first job in tech was actually as a programming engineer. However, since that time, I've never formally had a position as an engineer and do not think of myself as an engineer. And I'm interested in if you guys formally learned to code, went to school, taught yourself, and kind of if there was a transition in becoming comfortable with that label in terms of self-identification, because I see a lot of self-filtering. People, don't think of themselves as gamers even though they play games. They don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs even though they're starting companies, things like that. And it just struck me that that's actually a really potent label that there could be a lot of self-filtering around, and I was shocked that I did it.
It's interesting that you make that statement, because we were having a conversation in the back where I was saying I was a comp sci major undergrad, and I wanted to join NSBE, which stands for National Society of Black Engineers. And back then, because it was back then, I was kind of, comp sci was pretty new. Put it this way, none of my professors had comp sci degrees because they didn't offer them then. All my professors were had math degrees. And because I didn't fit the label of an engineer, I had to write an extra application and a letter as to why should NSBE accept me as part of that organization, because they didn't see me as an engineer. So it's interesting how I can even, recently there was that Twitter thing, hashtag I look like an engineer, so I did my little I look like an engineer. And then a friend of mine who is actually an engineer by training and discipline, she was like, man, your company really, highlights you, and you're not even like an engineer. I was like, okay, our friendship's about to come to an end. Hashtag over. But it's interesting because these labels, it's just so open for definition. I don't know that I actually had saw myself as an engineer until I heard that term being used for software developers, coders, and so I was like, well, I guess I'm an engineer too, so.
I just want to quickly say that it's not you. As long as we have a sense of a stereotypical person for a role, there'll always be people self-selecting out. Yeah. And that's, to me, what we need to destroy or add on to.
And for the record, I dropped out of school. I didn't take, much comp sci, and I've worked at Apple, Google, and now Twitter. as an engineer and as an engineering manager. So, whether or not, somebody wants to call you, if you're doing coding, you're pushing code to production, you're an engineer.
Great.
Hey, my name is Alex Davis. I'm an engineering manager for Airbnb. And one thing that I really found present at this conference is the concept of colorblindness as a negative thing. That's something that I'm definitely going to take home a lot. I'm curious as to what are some aspects in which that has been overcome for you that have been very positive. So, which is to say, the aspects in which diversity comes into play have been acknowledged in a very positive way, either in your career or, well, particularly in your career. Or are there any examples?
Yeah. Do you mind if I take this one?
No, go for it.
So people ask, how do you know that the work that you're doing with diversity is doing any change? But the simple answer is if I can be in a meeting and I can look around the room and see a part of my identity in somebody else other than myself, then I know we're making change and we're making a difference. If I'm no longer an only and I'm no longer this ambassador representative token to speak for every woman or queer person or person of color, then I know we're making change. And when you have an organization that is supportive of that, if you have an organization where you can say, hey, we want to change the restrooms and have single stall restrooms be all gender, or we want to start a LGBT ERG or family ERG, and people respond with, yeah, that sounds awesome, we should do that, then you know you're making change. And if people are responding with questions or like pushback, dissect them. Understand why they don't think that it's appropriate, because most of the time it's really just someone doesn't understand or doesn't see past, for lack of any better term, their own privileges to see why these organizations are needed.
We have time for one more?
Hi. Hi, my name is Bianca St. Louis. Thank you all for sharing your insights. So my question is, how do you balance, being excellent at your job? Because fundamentally, that is why you're there, as well as, still engaging. And I think, how are you thinking about engaging allies? Because I don't think the burden of solving diversity in tech should be on folks of color. But yeah, so what advice would you give for, I think, younger engineers to really thinking about balancing being great at their job, but also being passionate about this work? Because, yeah.
And microaggressions. And life progression.
Microaggressions?
Life progression.
Oh, life.
Oh, my.
Oh, so I was right. Okay.
I think, the balancing piece, it's a hard thing. It's there's never equal balance. I have 4 kids. I work. I have a husband, so maybe 5 kids. 4 kids. And work. And I think it's an effort that you just have to, for me, that I have to choose to make. I can say, hey, I work, and I have a great department that allows me to, right now I'm supposed to be at several meetings. I'm like, hey, I have this event today. And they're like, okay, go for it. So it was allowing me to find that balance of when I'm going to engage at certain things at work, when am I going to engage at certain things outside of work. But it's a conscious effort that I have to make. And I have, I do have a wonderful husband who supports me in these efforts, and it isn't extra. He's like, this is our responsibility. This is our responsibility to help in whatever way. So I take a whole day and volunteer Black Girls Code building robotics. That's something that I think is, I sacrifice a Saturday with the family, but I think it's definitely a piece of responsibility that I have.
Just one quick note on that. Be comfortable saying no. That's a big thing.
That is.
Because if you get really excited and you continuously start to go to these events and you represent the company's going to look back and be like, well, you've always really said yes. And it becomes this second job that you're not prepared for, and you're also probably not going to be compensated for, because it's something that you're doing out of passion. So be comfortable saying no.
Say yes to the other people around you who do go and do stuff, and if you surround yourself and build that community, together, with that support, can have a big impact.
And for me, it's always building the support inside your organization. I mean, as an engineering manager, I get to like tell people I'm gone, see you later. But it's also having the discussions with them throughout, our careers and throughout our days and our one-on-ones. And hey, I'm doing this, and they ask me, and they are very, very open about that, and they're very good at supporting. They're like, yeah, go, and they also turn around and say, I'm going to go do this conference, and it's. Work is much like a family, and you do cover each other's backs. And as long as you're having those conversations, it shouldn't be that difficult. But you're right, you do sometimes just have to say no. You have to say no to work. You have to say no sometimes to your family.
I know, that's a hard one. Well, listen, I am getting the flag. Cut it, stop. So we are out of time. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to my wonderful panel for being here.